Thanks very much, Rick. That was a great presentation. But we're going to have to, I'm afraid, go from dark to darker. Probably some of you are. I'm sort of a fanatical reader of Pat Lang's Sic Semper Tyrannis blog, and I have been for years and years. And one of the contributors that I always read because it's always incredibly insightful is Larry Johnson. Larry is an insider. He knows how things work. He's also, along with Phil Giraldi, who's here, member of the Veterans Intelligence Professionals for Sanity, which provides some very, very important reality checks that hopefully our president looks at when he gets a memo on this. But Larry Johnson has done a terrific job in breaking down the Russiagate scam, and he's going to talk to us today about something that is really chilling, which is the coup that happened in the United States against our duly elected president. So I won't say any more. I'll let him tell the story. Larry, thanks so much for joining us.
So let me put this in proper perspective. About 25 years ago, I was playing in the Bobby Mitchell Hall of Fame Classic Golf Tournament. To go to that, you have to be a member of the Hall of Fame, and then they let people like me come in and we get to play with them, and I played with a guy named Night Train Lane. Night Train Lane was a defensive back in the 50s and 60s, but at this time he was a fat old man. And they let the public come in. And as we pulled up to the 10th tee, this boy was there with his mother. And the little boy points at us and points at me and goes, "Mommy, who's that?" She goes, "He's a nobody." So just to put that clear. Knowledge is power, and I want to focus today on giving you some knowledge. Because I'm not going to make any assumption. We're going to first do a survey. How many in this audience have held a top secret security clearance SCI? Raise your hand. Very, very few. So therefore, I'm going to give you an example. You were lied to by Jim Comey, as an example, when he came out and talked about Hillary Clinton and her email server. Hillary Clinton had top secret material on her unclassified server. And Comey says, "Val, we just couldn't prove intent." That, boys and girls, is called bullshit. I hold in my hand salt and pepper, a salt shaker and a pepper shaker. The pepper shaker is the top secret server. The salt is the unclass server. Unless you're Penn and Teller, can you tell me how you accidentally put the pepper in the salt? It's impossible. You cannot do it. The simple act of moving pepper into salt requires intent. By definition, the fact that she had this material on unclassified servers showed intent, and it also highlights the corruption of the FBI. But what we're talking about today is, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I believe in dealing with facts. I still have held security clearances. I was up until a couple of years back doing regular exercise scripting for the Special Operations Forces of the U.S. government. And so I had access to classified information, but more importantly, I know how this thing works. So let me lay out the plot, and then we'll get down to some specifics. In the summer of 2015, this was not just about going after Donald Trump. The British government started collecting intelligence on all presidential candidates, including Bernie Sanders. This material, and the Brits can collect on us because we're foreigners. It's not against their law. Some of this they were doing with the encouragement of senior intelligence officials at the DNI and at the CIA. Now, it wasn't until later in that summer that the collection effort started picking up, and both the Central Intelligence Agency in the person of John Brennan and increased coordination with the Brits started doing this. That's phase one. At some point, and we got a hint of this in an email that was leaked or hacked between Brent Badowski and John Podesta. Badowski is a Democratic operative. And they were writing in December and basically said, you know what? We basically need to hang Vladimir Putin and around Donald Trump's neck. We need to make it a bromance. It wasn't, though, until March of 2016 that this effort to go after Trump solidified. Why? Because everybody else that was supposed to defeat him in the primaries were falling out. And then I'm going to go over some dates with you just to show you that this is not some idle fantasy on my part. Now, here's what we're told. We're told that FBI is minding its own business. Not a clue in the world, except they had been told that the Russians had hacked the DNC servers in 2015, but they never did anything about that. But now it's summer of 2016, minding their own business, and here comes Alexander Downer, an Australian diplomat. And he's saying, you know, I had this meeting 2 months ago with this guy, George Papadopoulos, and he's talking about getting Russian emails. And I waited 2 months because I thought you needed to know. And you're going, huh, that's 2 months. And then you read the criminal indictment of George Papadopoulos. And in the criminal indictment, they start talking about, well, there was this email, and there was this meeting, and there was this conversation, and this is what was said in that conversation. And everybody goes, yeah. So the question for you is, when did they get that information? Because the FBI supposedly didn't find out about this until the end of July of 2016, but the recording conversations that took place in March of 2016. They don't have a magical go back in time machine. They haven't perfected time travel. So that means one of two things. Either they got a FISA warrant to start going after George Papadopoulos, and this is no knock on George, but he's a 30-year-old kid with no experience and hasn't done anything, but all of a sudden he gets roped in as a foreign policy advisor to Donald Trump, and he's now somebody, and he gets dangled. And who do they send after him? A guy named Joseph Massoud. And when you read the Robert Mueller report, he never says that Massoud is a Russian agent or a Russian intelligence operative. He says Joseph Massoud has Russian connections and has traveled to Moscow. Now, using that as the criteria, we now know that Bill Clinton is a Russian agent because he has Russian connections. He's gotten money from Russia, and he's traveled to Moscow. Think about how ridiculous that is. And yet, when they start peeling back the layers on Massoud, you discover that Joseph Massoud has long-standing ties with British intelligence, MI6, with the CIA, and with the FBI. I do not believe in coincidence. And who was it that said, it wasn't like George Papadopoulos went to Joseph Massoud and said, hey, I've got this great idea. We ought to go to Russia. I'd like to meet Vladimir Putin's niece, by the way. He didn't have a niece. And we can help Donald Trump get in bed with the Russians. Papadopoulos didn't do that. The one that came and raised that idea, that said that this was a possibility, was the FBI, CIA, MI6 asset. That's called a dangle. You say, yeah, but that's just one case. Oh, no, it's not. Christopher Steele. We've heard about him and his much storied dossier, which is actually 17 different reports written over a period of time. Turns out he was an FBI fully signed up confidential human source. How do we know that? We know that from documentary evidence that's been released. They have what are called FD 1023s. Those were written initially because this was in the aftermath of the Whitey Bulger scandal with the FBI, where they used to deal with informants and not write down what was saying. Now you had to sign them up, you had to write it down and record it. So here's Christopher Steele, who's an FBI informant, and he's the one that's hired by the Clinton campaign to develop dirt on Trump. That took place supposedly in May of 2016, in that time frame. Felix Sater. Now remember the Trump Tower project in Moscow? Who was pushing that Trump Tower project in Moscow? It wasn't Michael Cohen. It was Felix Sater. And what people don't know about Felix Sater is, since 1998, Felix Sater was a fully signed up FBI informant. Who signed him up? Andrew Weissman, Robert Mueller's deputy. Coincidence? I don't think so. So when you read the Mueller report, the guy that comes to the Trump campaign and says, hey, let's go and see what we can get out of Moscow, it wasn't Michael Cohen, it was Felix Sater. And one other minor footnote. Michael Cohen's boyhood friend growing up in New York, Felix Sater. They grew up together. So all of a sudden you start seeing that in May, and let me see if I can pull this up, quick timeline for you. Let me just run down these dates, because if you read the Mueller report and you don't put it out on a timeline, you can easily think, oh, this is just, man, this is some terrible stuff. It all suggested that Trump was really involved with something dirty. So on May 4th of 2016, Papadopoulos forwards to Lewandowski an email that he received from this guy named Timofeyev, who was introduced to Papadopoulos by Joseph Mifsud. And he says, you know, maybe we should go have a meeting in Moscow, because that's what Mifsud said. So Papadopoulos passing it on like, oh, here's an idea, maybe I can make myself important to the campaign. That same day, May 4th, Felix Sater, FBI informant, he goes to Cohen and says, hey, let's do this Trump Tower deal in Moscow. There's two interesting events on May 4th, simultaneous. May 5th, the next day, Sater wrote to Cohen and passes on more information from Moscow about what the Trump campaign ought to be doing. You find that on May 6th, there are two military attaches in London that suddenly decide that they needed to go meet with George Papadopoulos and have a debriefing. I mean, again, not to knock Papadopoulos, but like me with the Bobby Mitchell Hall of Fame Golf Classic, he's a nobody. He was a nobody. He hadn't done anything, written anything, provided anything of any real note. There was an interesting approach to Roger Stone down in South Florida by another Russian who claimed to have all this dirt on Hillary. Turns out he was an FBI informant. Now, when you've got at least five active FBI informants out in a supposedly counterintelligence investigation that we're told wasn't launched until the end of July, and yet the information that's contained in there came from either a FISA warrant or from intercepted communications that were done by GCHQ, the British version of the NSA, or our own NSA. And if you doubt that we don't have this, all this material is in US government possession. They can go backwards, and then they do something which is called parallel construction, but it's illegal. It violates the Fourth Amendment rights of people. But then the most odd thing here is this entire, I call it the DNC hoax, as far as the hacking of the DNC by the Russians. The Russians did not hack the DNC. Just look at the facts. Alperovich, the head of CrowdStrike, a so-called cybersecurity firm, gets contacted early May, end of April, early May, and is told the Russians are inside. Okay, Now, Jim Comey testified later that the FBI had warned the DNC about all this going on a year before, but the DNC didn't do anything. So here's Alperovitch. We got the Russians inside. So what do? Nothing. They monitor. We know that the date of the last emails that came out of the DNC occurred on the 25th of May. Now, if you're a cybersecurity outfit and you're called in and somebody's saying, we're hacking this, what's the first thing you do? Disconnect the network. Turn it off. Guess what? You turn it off, no more hacking. Then you go back in and try to figure out how do they get in, and you install new security software. Nothing was done even on the 25th. And now this is not my opinion. This is Alperovitch's own words, according to a Washington Post reporter. He told her, she published the article on June 12th, I believe, or June 14th. He told her that they waited until June 10th to shut off the network and then install security software to stop those dastardly Russians. Now, how do we know it's not a hack? Well, there's this thing called metadata that's in the actual messages that are stored on the WikiLeaks server. And that metadata can tell you when the thing was copied, how it was copied. And it provides certain, I'm not the technical one on this, a friend of mine, Bill Benny, is. Bill was the technical director of the National Security Agency. What he discovered was that data that's contained in those DNC emails that were supposedly hacked by the Russians, in fact, show the forensic marks that they were transferred to some sort of medium, whether it was a thumb drive or a CD-ROM. It was not taken over the internet into Russia and then magically appeared at WikiLeaks. Now, what's fascinating is it has become almost an article of faith that, of course, the Russians hacked the DNC. Of course, not a shred of forensic evidence. Did CrowdStrike allow the FBI to come in, get the server, and identify and do the forensic analysis? No, they kept out of it. Now, what I strongly believe happened, and I know this in part thanks to Ellen Ratner. Ellen Ratner's brother was Julian Assange's attorney for a while. Ellen Ratner had a conversation with Julian Assange and basically said that he got the material from Seth Rich. Now, that's Ellen Ratner. She was, at one time, a respected journalist, and now if she says that, she's no longer respected. But the point of this is, what we're looking at was a coordinated effort between the intelligence community and the FBI. We have never had anything like this in our history. Regardless of what you think about Donald Trump, if you think he's a buffoon or if you think he's, God's gift to the world, regardless, this should not happen in this republic. The role of the FBI is to be controlled by law. The role of the intelligence community is not to be able to spy on its own citizens internally or to find clever workarounds where you can use outsourcing to people like the Brits to collect and then pass it in. And you want an evidence of that, because this is the last piece of knowledge I'll leave you with. You've all heard about unmasking, right? That they've unmasked the names of people that were in the Trump campaign. Do you understand that the only way you can unmask means that the person's name first had to appear in a top secret or secret intelligence report? This thing didn't magically fall from the sky. This meant that the name was specifically put into the report, and we're not talking about one name or two names. We're talking about hundreds of names. The scale of this intelligence collection that took place against American citizens is outrageous. And it didn't start with the campaign of 2015. Because we know previously Cheryl Atkinson had her computer hacked. We know that James Rosen, a Fox News correspondent for a while, he had his communications intercepted. The Obama administration found a way to start spying upon the American people, and like any 3-year-old who discovers a hammer, everything looked like a nail, and they hit it hard. So I'm glad that we're able to come together today. I encourage you from the standpoint of knowledge just to recognize the number of lies that are, don't accept at face value when they say certain things. Think it through logically. How did they get this information? How did they get the conversation that George Papadopoulos had with Joseph Massoud on April 26th in London when the FBI didn't open an investigation until July 31st? How does that happen? It's not magic. It's an abuse of our power, of our intelligence system and law enforcement. Thank you very much.